Burkina Faso has just sent a powerful message to the world. African land is not for sale. Under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traore, the country has taken a bold step that has left Western powers stunned, declaring that all land within its borders now belongs to the state, effectively ending foreign ownership and speculation. This decision challenges the long-standing control that Western corporations and foreign investors have had over Africa's resources. This move comes in the wake of U.S. President Donald Trump's controversial decision to cut aid to South Africa. Trump had accused the South African government of seizing land from the white minority, which makes up only 8% of the population, yet owns nearly 75% of the country's private land. His decision was meant to pressure South Africa into protecting the interests of these landowners. However, instead of falling in line, Ibrahim Traoré took an even bolder stance. Not only did he dismiss Trump's warnings, but he also announced plans to work closely with South Africa to reclaim lands exploited by Western corporations. These lands, rich with gold and other valuable minerals, have long been controlled by foreign firms that extracted billions of dollars in resources while leaving local populations in poverty. With a single stroke of his pen, Traoré did what South Africa has struggled with for decades. He issued an order reclaiming Burkina Faso's land from foreign hands without causing economic turmoil or backlash from local agribusiness and mining firms. The world is watching in shock, wondering how one African leader managed to achieve in minutes what others have debated for years. On February 5, 2025, the Council of Ministers in Burkina Faso passed a landmark bill that officially transfers all land ownership to the state. Under this new law, private ownership of land is abolished. Instead, land use will now be regulated through government-issued leases, ranging from 18 to 99 years. This prevents foreign corporations and elites from permanently seizing African land for their benefit. The implications of this move are massive. For centuries, Burkina Faso's land ownership system was dictated by customary laws, where local chiefs and elders controlled land distribution. While this traditional system had cultural significance, it lacked formal documentation, leading to endless disputes, corruption, and land grabs by powerful elites and foreign investors. Wealthy individuals and multinational corporations exploited these loopholes to acquire vast amounts of land with little accountability. By centralizing land ownership under the state, Traoré's government has ensured that every piece of land is accounted for and used efficiently for the benefit of the Burkinabe people. No longer will foreign investors buy up land, while locals struggle to find farming plots. No longer will Africa's resources be siphoned away while its people remain in poverty. Traoré's bold reforms are setting an example that other African nations may soon follow. For too long, Africa has been treated as an open market, where powerful nations and corporations extract wealth without investing in the local economy. Countries have been forced to invite foreign investors to develop their resources, only to see the profits leave their borders. But now, a new precedent is being set, one that prioritizes national sovereignty over foreign interests. Western nations, predictably, are alarmed by these changes. Their corporations have long benefited from African land policies that favored foreign ownership. But Traoré's decision proves that African nations no longer need to seek approval from the West before making decisions in their own interest. Burkina Faso is taking back control, and its message is clear. Africa's future will be decided by Africans, not by foreign powers. Traoré's administration has emphasized that this decision is not about consolidating power, but rather about ensuring stability in Burkina Faso's agricultural and industrial sectors. By taking control of land ownership, the government can prevent illegal land grabs regulate land use, and ensure that every piece of land is utilized for the benefit of the Burkinabe people rather than foreign investors. This marks a turning point in the country's fight for sovereignty over its own resources, setting a precedent for other African nations facing similar challenges. One of the most immediate and impactful outcomes of this reform is the complete ban on foreign land ownership. For decades, multinational corporations, sovereign wealth funds, and international banks have taken advantage of Africa's vast lands under the pretext of investment. These deals often resulted in environmental degradation, forced displacement of local farmers, and a situation where African nations produced food and resources for export while their own people struggled with poverty and food insecurity. The issue of land grabbing worsened after the 2007 to 2008 global food crisis, when food prices soared, prompting Western nations, China, and Middle Eastern states to compete for control of African farmlands. Like many other African nations, Burkina Faso experienced widespread land acquisitions that pushed local communities off their ancestral lands. Foreign investors secured vast territories for industrial agriculture, yet much of the land remained underutilized, held for speculation rather than actual production. Traore's new policies put an end to this practice once and for all. Foreign investors will no longer be able to purchase land in Burkina Faso. Instead, they will be limited to short-term leases that must adhere to strict government regulations. These agreements will be continuously reviewed to ensure they align with national interests, guaranteeing that Burkina Faso maintains full control over its own territory. To further prevent monopolization, the government has also implemented restrictions on how much land any single entity can lease. However, Traore's reforms go beyond stopping foreign exploitation. They also aim to revive Burkina Faso's struggling agricultural sector. Despite having millions of hectares of fertile land, Burkina Faso remains heavily dependent on food imports from Western nations. A key reason for this is the long-standing focus on cash crops like cotton for export rather than cultivating staple foods for domestic consumption. Under the new land policy, priority will be given to large-scale farming initiatives that directly contribute to food security. Instead of exporting raw materials to Western markets, Burkina Faso will shift its focus toward feeding its own population and supplying neighboring African nations. This aligns with the broader vision of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which seeks to build an independent African economy that is not reliant on Western imports. Beyond agriculture, these land reforms also target the mining sector, putting an end to decades of exploitation by Western corporations. Although Burkina Faso is one of Africa's top gold producers, the vast wealth hidden beneath its soil has historically benefited foreign companies rather than the Burkinabe people. For years, multinational mining firms secured massive plots of land, extracted precious resources like gold and uranium, and exported them with minimal economic returns to the country. To ensure long-term foreign dominance over Burkina Faso's natural wealth, multinational corporations directly purchased vast tracts of land under highly favorable agreements. These deals allowed them to extract billions of dollars in profit annually while paying minimal taxes and royalties, all under minimal government oversight. The result was a deeply unbalanced system where Burkina Faso, despite holding some of Africa's largest gold reserves, remained one of the poorest nations in the world. The structure of these agreements made the exploitation even more blatant. Once foreign corporations acquired land, they secured permanent control over it, ensuring that even as gold and mineral prices surged, Burkina Faso had no ability to renegotiate its share of the wealth. These companies extracted resources without increasing their contributions to the national economy, and in some cases, they used offshore accounts and tax loopholes to evade payments altogether. Beyond the economic injustice, The impact on local communities was devastating. Entire villages were uprooted without fair compensation to make way for mining operations, forcing thousands of people to abandon their ancestral lands. The environmental destruction that followed was equally severe. Toxic waste, including mercury and cyanide, contaminated rivers, destroyed farmland, and turned once thriving ecosystems into barren wastelands. Once the minerals were depleted, these companies simply moved on, leaving behind poisoned land and ruined communities without any obligation to restore what they had destroyed. Faced with this continued plunder, President Ibrahim Traore decided to put an end to the neo-colonial stranglehold on Burkina Faso's resources. His administration introduced a groundbreaking land policy that outright bans foreign mining companies from owning land. Instead of permanent ownership, these corporations must now operate under state-controlled leases, ensuring that no foreign entity can claim indefinite control over the country's mineral wealth. This shift represents a fundamental rebalancing of power. With leasing agreements, the Burkinabe government can frequently renegotiate terms, ensuring that mineral-rich land is not locked up indefinitely in foreign hands. Additionally, this policy gives the state greater authority to enforce strict labor laws and environmental regulations, something that was nearly impossible when these companies had outright ownership. A crucial aspect of Traore's reform is the requirement that foreign mining firms hire and train local workers. For decades, Burkina Faso's mining industry has been structured to favor foreign expertise, keeping Burkinabe workers in low-paying, labor-intensive positions while excluding them from higher-skilled technical roles. The lack of investment in local talent was a deliberate tactic to maintain the country's dependence on foreign specialists. That system is now being dismantled. Under the new laws, foreign corporations must employ a significant percentage of Burkinabe workers in skilled positions, not just as laborers. Moreover, companies are now required to fund training programs to equip local workers with the technical skills needed to manage mining operations themselves. This ensures that, over time, Burkina Faso will no longer have to rely on foreign expertise to extract its own resources. The era of multinational corporations treating Burkina Faso as a mere source of raw materials without benefiting its people is coming to an end. President Traore's policies mark a new chapter in the country's fight for economic independence, one in which its natural wealth is no longer a tool of exploitation, but a foundation for national development. Under Traore's direction, mining firms are now required to fund training initiatives, ensuring that Burkinabe laborers acquire the abilities and know-how required to eventually manage their own mining businesses independently of outside assistance. Traore is creating the foundation for Burkina Faso to eventually run its own mining industry autonomously by mandating that multinational businesses transfer technology and experience. Traore's concept guarantees that Burkinabe workers become engineers, managers, and decision-makers in the sector, rather of being continuously confined to a system where they are merely laborers. All of this creates a new trend that can be followed throughout Africa and reduces the influence of Western corporations in Burkina Faso. And this causes problems for the Western politicians, such as Trump, who is supported by millionaires like Elon Musk. These billionaires' interests in Africa are closely related to the natural resource extraction operations of the Western corporations. This is because the manufacturing businesses owned by these billionaires rely on these particular corporations for their raw materials. As a result, Burkina Faso's new land policies have caused much alarm in the West, particularly among Trump. They pose a danger to the entire neo-colonial economic system that has perpetuated decades of poverty in Africa. Western corporations stand to lose billions if more African nations follow the example set by Burkina Faso under the leadership of Ibrahim Traore. For decades, these foreign companies have thrived on lopsided deals that favor them while leaving local populations in poverty. Their success has relied on weak African governments willing to trade national sovereignty for short-term financial gains. But now, with Burkina Faso reclaiming its land and resources, the tide is turning. If other resource-rich nations take similar steps, it could mark the beginning of the end for Western economic dominance in Africa. Countries like Mali, Niger, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which hold vast deposits of gold, uranium, and other valuable minerals, may soon follow suit. This is what truly concerns Western policymakers: the potential for an African awakening that reclaims wealth stolen for generations. Burkina Faso's mining industry has undergone a historic transformation under Traoré's leadership. By enforcing strict labor laws, banning foreign ownership of land, implementing environmental protections, and ensuring technological transfer, he has shattered the exploitative framework that once defined the country's relationship with foreign investors. The days of Western corporations treating Burkina Faso as a mere extraction site for minerals and gold are over. Instead, the country is now asserting control over its own resources, ensuring that the profits benefit its people, rather than lining the pockets of foreign elites. This shift is not without consequences. South Africa has already taken similar steps toward land reform and is facing backlash. Yet, Traoré remains undeterred. He has already neutralized French influence, stripping France of its power over Burkina Faso. Now, if the United States attempts to impose sanctions or economic penalties, Traoré is prepared to counteract them in the same way. What's happening in Burkina Faso is part of a growing Pan-African movement aimed at reclaiming the continent's wealth from foreign hands. By aligning with South Africa, Burkina Faso is strengthening a united front against Western economic coercion. The more African nations that take back control of their land and resources, the less power Western countries will have to manipulate African economies through financial aid and exploitative trade agreements. This is a defining moment in Africa's economic history. Traoré's land reforms signal a radical shift, one that could completely reshape the continent's economic structure. For the first time, an African leader has taken decisive action to eliminate foreign land control entirely, ensuring that Burkina Faso's wealth remains in the hands of its own people. His message to the world is clear: Burkina Faso refuses to be exploited any longer. But will other African nations follow this path? South Africa has already begun reversing the injustices of the colonial era by reclaiming land. If more nations join in, the Western economic stronghold over Africa could finally collapse. This is why the West is alarmed and watching closely. Should all African nations reclaim their land from foreign control? Should Western corporations be barred from acquiring massive land holdings that are later used as leverage to destabilize governments and sow division? And why is it that Trump, who took action against South Africa over land reforms, has been unable to do the same against Ibrahim Traoré? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next discussion.